Inshallah khair. We'll start inshallah. Bismillah. Alhamdulillah. Salatu wassalam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. I know that you guys just started this program and completely feel blessed and honored that I was invited to speak to you guys. And subhanAllah, the topic matter was given kind of like in the aspect of let's talk about influential person or a powerful person in the history of Islam. And kind of maybe focusing more on female that was in the history of Islam. Why? Because we have definitely, mashallah, a lot of stories of Sahaba and righteous khulafa and righteous men that we constantly hear their stories, which is a little bit easier to give their story, right? It's easier because their story is more public. And women are usually more kind of reserved. Unless it's something spectacular, it came out, right? And you notice this is really the case even in our time. It's not like we evolved in this too much. Women are more kind of like reserved and do their thing between women more than they do with a mixed crowd, right? But I think that men and women can benefit from each other, right? There's different ideologies, different teaching methods, there's different delivery methods. Even the emotional aspect of learning from both, it differentiates. So I think it's very important that we learn from these influential and powerful women. And with everything going on, I was like, well, who do I want to talk about? Or what type of message do I want to portray with you guys today? And like I said, I know many people are probably not here, as I know Orland Park is very active and full of volunteers. And I would say this, young people thirsty for knowledge. People want to come and learn and feel that strength of unity with their community, which is, mashallah, very applaudable, alhamdulillah. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases you and increases this community, but also what's very important is He keeps us sincere in those efforts. And this is what we're going to learn about a woman called Rabia Basriyya, rahimahullah. So, radiyallahu anha. So in this aspect, she was one of the most influential women in the history of Islam. And this is something too that both can benefit, both men and women in this room, from the type of person she was. And today when we are speaking about or we're going to dive into a personality that was unique. She was unique in her personality. She was an individual that really taught the world how to truly love Allah. How to truly love Allah with that purity, that sincere heart. And how to fall in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be a true servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where sometimes I feel people go wrong. Once they get a little bit of knowledge, they get a little bit of energy, they want to work in the favor of Allah, and they start off really good with good intentions. And then what happens as human beings, we tend to do what? If we don't humble ourselves and put ourselves kind of in our place, we will always find people that will love us and hate us, right? You'll find that lover-hater type of relationship. But if you do good and you have that sincere intent, what you're going to do is surround yourself with people like you that love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when we advance, what happens? We have a problem with kind of like praising each other. So it's one thing to be confident in our good deeds and one thing to also applaud people at their good deeds. But when we do it extensively, we hurt each other. We actually hurt each other. But she kind of brought this concept into focus again. Out of falling in love with Allah and being that true servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And with this time and age, when we actually think of a saint, we kind of like have this thing envisioned to us. And that's why sometimes as humans, we're hard on each other. So if somebody is said that they're a good person, all of a sudden you'll find somebody that tries to look for a flaw. So they can say, oh, that person is not so perfect, right? You think that person is perfect, but now they're probably done with college, in their career, now probably looking to extend their life with a companion. And all of a sudden you'll find a lot of people will say, this person is so good, this person, this. And then all of a sudden you'll find that random few be like, yeah, but did you know what they did in high school? Like that type of mindset of what is a real saint. You know, we're not angels that walk on the earth. I mean, we could work really hard on doing good things and being good people and trying to be good in every aspect of our life, right? But we're not angels that walk on the earth, but our objective is to try to be the best that we can be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's perfecting that ibadah the best that we can. But when we think of a saint, sometimes we immerse that thought with thinking, oh, this person has to be those that are secluded, those that have, like, maybe for a guy, a thobe and a big beard, and he really doesn't see people, and he's a little bit even socially awkward. This person is like a saint. They stay away from mainstream society, right? They're not normal people. And for a woman, maybe she's even too intense in her studies and her dress code and her modesty and her seclusion also from people, and we might think this person is extra righteous or extra religious. But in a reality, this is sometimes the perception that we hold within our minds. Yeah.
The saint's quiet on the live on the video. You mind bringing it closer?
Yeah. Closer to me like this?
Yeah,
okay. All right. Perfect. So sometimes that perception that we have within our minds, it kind of handicaps us. But this is the person that broke all of these perceptions. She was just a normal person in society, but her goal and her actions showed that she just wanted to worship Allah out of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She just loved Allah so much that she just wanted to worship Him through that concept of love. And that taught the world that there is not a specific type of figure that you have to be like in order to truly love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people really have that mindset that if I'm not this specific person, then I'm not special to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? How some people perceive our teachers or our imams or our scholars, that those are special people. But anybody could be special to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anybody could be a friend to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala based off of your good deeds and your ideology and your belief in Him and your desire for Him, your consciousness of Him. So it's just the actual quality and love that has to be within the heart. It roots in the heart, and then it gets manifested through our words and in our actions. Because Iman is not just the concept of saying I love Allah and that's it. Okay, it's not I love Allah and that's it. It is really all about that love that's originated from the heart goes actually to the physical component of on your tongue and acted with the limbs. Because we can say we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala till we're blue in the face, trying to convince everybody we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what are our actions? What are our thoughts? What are our words saying? Truly. So to earn that level of sainthood, to earn that level of wilaya, right? That friendship, to earn that level of true and sincere love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within our hearts, and this person has the personality you will favor, you will adore her, you will be inspired by her. And one of the favorite personalities in history of Islam, that was her, and she was none other than Rabia Basriyya. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on her. Now, who was she? Her actual name, if you ever heard of it before, was Rabia al-Adawiyya, because she was from a tribe of Adi. And her name, Rabia, was given according to the historians. So like when you look at Ibn Jawzi and Imam Ghazali, Imam As-Safahani, they write about her. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shower all of them with His mercy. They wrote about her, and they say that her name, Rabia, was because she was the fourth daughter of her family, which comes from Rab'a, the number four in the Arabic language. Now, what was unique about learning her story, my mom got her say a name that way too. My mom's name is Rab'a. And once I asked my mom, how did you get your name? Like, where did it come from? Like, I'm Palestinian in origin, but I was born and raised here. So I didn't know, like, I'm not really big on the artists and the singers and stuff like that. She was like, I'm thinking she was named after something, or like it was weird that she was named for, like Rabia. She's like, I was the fourth one. So sometimes old school wise, they used to name these names like weird names like Khadra and Rabia and all these things that they just came to their mind. And this is the same connection that she had with her, is that my mom was the fourth one named that, and she was the fourth one in her family, and she was named Rabia. So you could say Rabia, Rabia. And this is how she got her name, which comes from Rabia. Now, who was she? She did not have the traits of what you and I will have the ideology of a famous person, right? What makes people famous? When you look at people, what brings them to the status of fame? Whether you look at power and authority, you look at beauty or wealth or position, right? You look at certain things or knowledge, you look at certain things that brings and raises that person to a level that people can look at and speculate and put in a position of authority, right? Because that's where kind of like we look at these things and we see how a person can become famous, what makes them interesting to people, that people will talk about them. So whether it's position, family, wealth, or beauty, she didn't have those things. She didn't have those things. She didn't have this big, huge name, popular name. She didn't come from like this big, wealthy family. She didn't have these things that would normally categorize somebody as famous, and if they had a specific position. And alhamdulillah, she was pretty, but she wasn't extra beautiful. You would say she was ordinary. So she didn't possess the beauty of the world. She was actually even barren, that she couldn't even have kids. She wasn't able to have kids. So she didn't have any children. She was born in one of the poorest families in Basra. And to the extent that she became a slave at one point of her time, in her time. So why do people speak about her? Why do people know of her? Why do people call her one of the most influential women in our history? It is because she was the reviver of the concept of loving Allah and how to love Allah and how to make it the roots of our life. That Allah's love must be deep-rooted in our hearts. Not just lip service, right? Not just saying we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but really having deep roots, strong foundation in loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She was the reviver of that concept of how to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So one day people saw her running in the streets, and people would assume she was like a mad woman. She was running in the streets of Basra, and she had a bucket of water, and she was just like throwing it and splashing it everywhere. And the people go to her, "Oh, Rabia, have you gone mad? What are you doing?" And subhanAllah, she replied, and she says, I'm taking this bucket of water and I'm throwing it around, just thinking to myself how I wish Allah takes the water of the world and removes the fire of Jahannam. I wish He just takes the water of the world, remove the fire of Jahannam. And He removes the paradise of Jannah. Look at her concept. I want you to really think of these words. She wants Allah to remove the fire of Jahannam, to remove the paradise of Jannah, and that there is no Jannah to hope for, and no Jahannam to be afraid of. And there is no Jannah to yearn, and there is no Jahannam to be scared of. But all there is love of Allah. So she didn't even want that specific kind of balance where we understand in our faith we have to have three, right? We have to have the love of Allah and the fear of Allah and always hoping in His mercy to really understand the best way of worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But she wanted all those things that we kind of work for and stay away from to be out of the picture, just to purely love Allah and worship Allah through love. to look at Allah, know who He is, admire Him, worship Him sincerely just out of love. And there are people that come into this faith out of love because they see the beautiful attributes of Allah, the generosity, the kindness of Allah, the mercy of Allah, and people want to embrace this faith out of love. And you have opposite people, right? So they don't come into the faith really focused on faith through the love aspect. They come through the fear aspect, right? Most of our parents taught the fear aspect before the love aspect. They made us kind of go crazy with not a Jannah and how it's going to burn us if we do anything, even, let alone laugh or goof off, right? But reality is we have to teach the concept of love first. And that's how we learned from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He taught the concept of knowing Allah, not associating partners with Allah, loving Allah for exactly who He is. Then, after that foundation was built, then the do's and the don'ts came, right? So we have to learn that concept from the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and it was the best concept. You know, subhanAllah, you'll learn how powerful the component of love is. So this is exactly her kind of mindset. She didn't even care for any of those things. She just wanted pure love of Allah. And the people worship Him just because they love Him, not worshiping Allah because they want Jannah. But we know that that's okay, right? I don't want to now distract you from your ideology of, oh yeah, I'm doing a good deed because eventually I want the pleasure of Allah, but what do I want too? I want Jannah. Well, we know if we have the pleasure of Allah, we're gonna get Jannah, right? We shouldn't be working for the prize. We should be working for the source. So the concept of working for the source will get us the prize, right? We don't just work for bonuses. We work for the paycheck. So in that concept, we learn that it is okay to worship Allah with the prize in mind, but we want to also understand we're worshiping Allah because we love Allah. We worship Allah because He is our Lord. He is our maker. He is our shaper. He is the one who provides us with everything. When we have Him, we have everything. We don't have Him, we don't have anything. So that true concept of that mindset. But she created that concept that I am worshiping Allah just because I love Allah. And Rabia loved worshiping Him. She really loved worshiping Him. One thing that was written about her when she was taken into her grave, this was like a dream one of her students had, and as she was a mentor of his, says that I saw in a dream that when she was taken to her grave, both the doors and windows of Jannah were open for her. Both the doors and the windows of Jannah were all open for her. And she said, I don't want this. Give me my prayer rug so I can just please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there was no other objective in her life. This was her hadaf. This was her purpose. She loved doing it. She was always motivated in doing it out of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So sometimes while I'm finishing up this lecture and talking more about her so we could learn this concept, think about yourself. Because it's very important that we do not extract her from us. Because she was a servant of Allah and we're a servant of Allah. So that concept of love in your life, of loving Allah, do you worship Allah because you love Him, you recognize His place in your life, His abilities in your life, His gives and takes in your life? Do you appreciate that? Are you humbled by it? Are you grateful for it? Because this is what's going to make us love Him more and more, when we can actually see other than just what's in front of us. We have to go beyond that with the aspiration of knowing who Allah is and what He's capable of. What's His role in my life? Because we have to, in order to be good Muslims, we have to, one, be humble. We have to love. We have to recognize. We have to be grateful. If we don't, we lose focus. We will lose focus, definitely, in that concept. Okay? So, on this aspect, on the Day of Judgment, when she will be directed towards Jannah, she once again will say, Ya Allah, I just want to pray 2 rak'at. I want to keep my head in sujood And this is why it's said about her and is written about her by the scholars and the historians, that she would go even to her husband. She was married and she was fairly young. And she would go to her husband before he would go to sleep and ask him, do you need anything or do you have any need towards me? If he would say no, she would then seek his permission to go and pray. Now, I know that in today's society, this kind of concept of seeking permission in the spousal's roles is something debatable. People have an issue with this, but reality is go back to the origin. And we have to understand this. I'm not just like anybody sitting here in front of you. I am a woman myself, same thing. But look at her concept is they knew that when they got married, it was a joint relationship. And that relationship has needs, right? And wants. And we don't just step on those boundaries whenever we want to, however we want to, with the excuses of, I want to do something different. But there is, did you ever see that square that is taught to us all in school? How something is not important but urgent. Something that's not urgent, not important. Something that's important but not urgent, and then something that's not urgent, not important, right? You have every time in life when you're making decisions, you want to look at what's more of a priority, what needs your time now, what can be delayed, what is a priority here and there. What is she asking her husband for? Right? What is she even asking permission from her husband to go pray? Because this is an extra prayer. Is it for the faridah? No, it's at night when she's probably going to pray qiyam or tahajjud, which is an extra prayer, when in reality, that is a time frame that usually spouses want each other, desire each other. So that's a fulfillment of that relationship. And that's why she's asking permission, because she wants to not only please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but she also wants to do right by everything else. So this is a reality. So she asked her husband if she can go pray if he didn't have a need towards her, and she would. And you know, he always admired her. He wouldn't just go to sleep. He would sit there and watch her as she's worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he's seen that sincerity that came out of her. He actually seen it. So when you look at this concept, he said, her husband says she would go and pray, and I would sit there and look at her. And all night she would be in sujood crying, standing and praying for a long period of time, and not noticing that she's asking for anything specifically other than she just loves Allah and loves worshiping Allah, and she wants to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So see how sometimes we even get mistaken by, oh, I want to please this person, but I'm willing to step on something else to do it. No, we can't do that. We got to understand the concept of just because I'm doing something right, but if it hurts somebody, I'm not going to do it. True? This is very true. Doesn't mean if I'm doing something, even this happens even in our communities, we're doing things that are good. People will do something wrong to do something good, which does not make sense. So thinking through, what are my true intentions when I'm doing this? And will it benefit me? Will it please my Lord? Will it affect anybody else? This is something that we have to kind of constantly be thinking about. So the only goal that she had in mind was to worship Allah, and she worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through love. Now her husband passed away while she was still a young woman. So it was during the time of Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah, which I'm sure all of you guys know of and heard many different lessons from Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah. And Hassan al-Basri came to her and he actually proposed to her. Like, he was so in awe of who she was and how she worshipped and what she stood for, that he was constantly in respect and love for her. So he had a great deal of respect for this woman. And they say about Hassan al-Basri, he wouldn't even start a halaqah of ilm, of knowledge, until Rabia al-Basriyya actually came and sat down out of love and respect for her. You see, even this talks to you about the relationship between teacher and student, or teacher, or kind of like worshiper, or at the same time just community member, male, female, they recognized each other. And that recognition didn't all have to be just about looks and lust and love and something impure. No, it was true love and respect for one another. And it was a respect that I don't need to have something or gain something for you to give you that position, which is now is kind of like something seen. It's not just recently, it's been in there, where if you want somebody from somebody, it's almost like they have to do something for you to do something for them. But this is purity. This was pure love and respect just because of who she was and what she was, what she stood for, what she did. So he had a great level of respect for Rabia. So one day he comes to her and he says, "Oh Rabia, your husband has passed away. I want to ask you, will you marry me? May I marry you?" He's asking for her hand in marriage. And this marriage, by the way, wasn't just because an attraction of the world. You know, some people, when they marry, they go and marry because of what? They marry because the honor of the name, or the wealth status, or the position that person carries, right? But this was nothing to do with the attraction of the dunya. It had nothing to do with anything gaining of the dunya. This was because she loved Allah and she was so committed to Allah that he wanted a part of that love. He wanted a part of that love and commitment. And then she says to him, look at her, she was a tough cookie. She goes to him, "Oh Hassan, if you can answer these questions for me, then I will marry you. I have no objection." So he says, "Go ahead, ask away." So what are the common questions that we see people asking now? Yani haram. Yani I see people literally, and I'm saying this to you, I'm not mocking. I've tried to connect some people with things, and I kind of like wonder, like, what's going on with the people today? They literally have like a questionnaire, and they're asking each other shooting questions like, what? What happened to normal connection? Yes, we have priorities in our life. We have our faith and our character and what we want out of life. It's important to say certain things like, I want to have my education, I want to work, or I don't want to work, I want to have kids. I want to have kids, but not right now. Certain things, certain qualities of family. Oh, I want to stay kind of within my community. I don't want to really travel out. But there's certain things not in our hands, right? I could want 10 kids. I cannot have no kids. I could say I want to stay with my family, but it's written for me to move away from my family. What if my studies, my major ends up taking me to a different state or country, and I didn't plan that? I didn't want that, but it went and I had to go with it, right? There's paths that God has for us and there's paths that we desire. Those desired paths can be changed and redirected, and we as Muslims have to believe in that qadar. That we do what's best for our dunya and our akhirah. And we do our dunya, but not on the sacrifice of our akhirah. And this is the sunnah of life. But I hear people like saying, well, what do you think about this movement? Or what do you think about I could care less. Right now, I still want to know, who are you? What do you like? What's your hobbies? What do you see yourself in like 5 years, 10 years? What type of person you want? What type of person do you get along with? What's your faith like? What's your character like? Right? That's more important to me than if you really, honestly, like to me, that's more important than me asking you, what do you think of this? Right? So I'm not going to put societal issues in my plate with you when I don't even know you yet. You're not my husband or my wife. And we're not going to discuss these things right now. So I understand people, what they go into, common questions that people ask usually nowadays, like, okay, what's this person's profession? What do they look like? How much are they earning? Where do they live? Right? Who is their family? What's their status? But some of these are so focused on and taken away from what really is going to have two people connect. And two people are not just going to connect just by physical. Okay, they're going to connect and they need to be compatible. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, not necessarily compatible, because it could be a tall person liking a short person. It could be a skinny person liking a chubbier person. It could be a light person liking a darker person. So it doesn't mean compatibility, you have to look identical or come from the same breed. No. Actually, that's when you hear opposites attract, right? But when it comes to the heart and goals and life, family, aspirations, objectives in my life, they have to be compatible. We have to be compatible. We have to be interested in each other.